All right, welcome back. I'm Zach, and boy, do I have a crazy episode for y'all today, and a even crazier question, if I may. Have I found the biblical link to the Great Pyramid after all these years? And I wasn't even searching for it, praise God. I honestly think the evidence that I've compiled here surely points to that. In our quest to uncover the mysterious connections between Biblical Kaphtor and mythical Egypt and Crete and the lands thereof, I have found some of the most exciting evidence pointing to Mizraim and Kaphtor being sons of Ham and Noah, being the originators and founders of ancient Memphis. And do you know where ancient Memphis is? The Giza Plateau. I didn't even know that, and I was reading this stuff for hours, researching it, doing for my previous studies, and bam, I figured out here we are on the Giza Plateau. Crazy enough, and I have lots of ties to show you. So yeah, the Great Pyramids at Giza, 12 miles south of Cairo, on the west of the Nile River. These beautiful suckers right here. Join me as we embark on a journey that takes us from the land of Mizraim, in most of your Bibles known as Egypt, that is a biblical name, a son of Ham, to the ancient island of Crete. So from Egypt to Crete is the connections we're making, and we're starting here in Egypt. In our last episode, our first episode really, we started in the Bible and the biblical foundations for Kaphtor. So make sure you go back and check that out if you haven't, or if you need the information, maybe you have a lot of it, but I definitely recommend checking that out. And crazy enough, in the midst of doing that, tying that story in, chasing down Genesis 10, 13, and 14, where it says that Mr. Mizraim had a child named Kaphtor, and from him came the Philistines, right? So we're chasing that down and looking at the intriguing connections between biblical figures and mythological cultures. And I hope that sounds exciting to you, and if it does, join me. Let's get going. So before we dive into the pyramids and the biblical connections with it, and just how amazing that it is that the Bible is tying us into basically Giza, Egypt, aka ancient Memphis, let's try to remember where we left off last week so we can build upon that foundation. So the Bible here in Genesis 10, as we talked about last week, states that Kaphtor came from Egypt. As you see there in verse 13, the Kaphtorites. And they went to Crete from Egypt, and then from there they ended up moving even further to become the Philistines. And the Bible states that quite a few times over. So we're hunting down that story, trying to prove that Kaphtor and his father Mizraim started their own god cults, crazy enough, and that Kaphtor then moved to Crete, which is where we find the Minoan culture, aka the Keftiu. So Kaphtor had to start in Egypt, because the biblical name for Egypt is Mizraim, as we see here in verse 13. So Mizraim is the biblical namesake for Egypt, and that Kaphtor had to come out of him to start Crete to then become the Philistines. So we're going to get into that a little bit more, but I wanted to remind you that, and that we went over this right here a couple times. Ptah and his tie-in to the name of Kaphtor. Ptah, the preeminent god of the city of Memphis, ancient Memphis that we're talking about here, where the pyramids of Giza are, the Seqqara tombs, right? It's the most ancient city in Egypt, probably. So it's one of the earliest administrative centers of the unified Egyptian nation. Ptah apparently lent his name to the nation itself, at least in the Greek tongue. So the Greek called the nation of Egypt not after Mizraim, but after his son. And so this is where we get our strong tie-in that the Egyptian, not here, but the Egyptians called their nation Hem, which is Ham. Okay, so it's biblical Ham, or something approximating this. But the Greek name that we have refers to this land as Aegyptos. So it's interesting that the Egyptians call it after Ham, the Bible calls it after Mizraim, and the Greeks call it after Kaphtor, his son, the father, son, grandson, right? And the big tie-in here is this Greek transliteration of the Egyptian name. The Egyptian is Het-ka-ptah. So what you see is the Het means house or the temple, the mansion of the Ka of Ptah. Well, I'm arguing that didn't originally stand for the Ka of Ptah, that originally stood for the house of Kaphtor. That's how you would spell Kaphtor, and that ties us into the other thing we talked about last week. And here we have the paintings that we were also going over last week that shows it's actually inside of the tomb of an Egyptian noble in Egypt, and this is the painting of the Cretans, and they're called the Keftiu, like Kaphtor, Keftiu, and the Akkadians called these same people the Kaptara, which really ties in etymologically with our study. But to spice this up a little bit even more, I found a highly interesting sidebar. I found that the argument against the fact that Crete was formed by Kaphtor, that Crete was formed by children of the lineage of Ham, which would mean that Crete was initially formed by black males, right, Egyptian males, that they're against it for that reason, because the island of Crete, that's where Zeus was born, that's where Kronos went. That was like a cradle of civilization there, the great Minoan civilization that we think is Atlantis, right? So there's a little bit of a fight going on between people over the ethnicity question, which doesn't really bother me any. I find it interesting. So their argument is that the mitochondrial DNA tests done on people from this islanders of Crete, have higher levels of Southern European DNA. So I repeat, the mitochondrial DNA has higher levels of Southern European DNA than Egyptian. But what they're not going to tell you is that mitochondrial DNA is the DNA that's DNA that's took from the mother. Mitochondrial gets passed down the female line. That's not the Y chromosome DNA. So it's not surprising to me, because the myths and pictures that I've seen of Crete in the Minoan society show men with Egyptian complexions with women having white complexions. And in this little sidebar here in the Legend of Crete, which I'm going to read soon in a different study, but ties directly to this, right, that this guy's wife leaves him, this Egyptian guy who's in the Negev, which is like the desert by Egypt, goes up into Edom to get a different wife, right? And it's the same type of like goddess cult thing. It has the king's name is KRT, which reminds me of Crete. He's starting from Egypt, which reminds me of Kaphtor, and the same letter initials, KRT. And he goes to the land of Edom to get a bride. Maybe that's our Kaphtor that did that, and he brought the white chick to the island of Crete, right? What about the story of Zeus taking Europa and taking her to the island of Crete? Let's just take a moment to appreciate what the pictures from Crete are telling us and saying about Minoan culture. It seems just as likely to me that the culture in the god cult was built upon their original mother goddess being white, and that's okay, because different nations have black mothers and white mothers and Asians mothers. That's okay. All right, so we're not going to freak out about it. I find it actually just interesting and cool. So it would follow that the culture would seek to replicate it, right? So if it's founded as a cult, right, and the mother's white and the male are Egyptian, and they set that down as a religion, wouldn't you find it normal that the culture and the population would follow after that trend? Because culture replicates its heroes and its founders initially. And the DNA test just shows that Crete population would mingle with the Greeks, and it would still center around their bull god cult. And that's more of what we want to focus on. Once again, that his name lines up with being Kaphtor, and you can type that into Google yourself and see, and we did it last episode to show how much it ties into it. And so I just want to reiterate, in Egypt they say it means the temple of the Ka of Ptah, the Ka, the active spirit. I'm saying it's the temple of Kaphtor that then went and became Crete, because he had to start somewhere, and he started a bull cult. Well, here we're in the middle of a bull cult, and I want to start to add on to that idea, because remember, Minoan bull cult, the Minotaur. This gentleman Ptah states that his ba, or his body, his soul, his body soul tie is literally an apis bull. So to wrap it up here, we're at a place with the same name as Kaphtor of the Bible, where they're worshiping a bull as God. That name Kaphtor then moves to Crete etymologically and biblically, where there is another bull cult that is made, and a minotaur, and a first-kinged Minos, where every building was topped by bull horns. Are you seeing the connections yet? Just wait, it's just getting started. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a place called Seqqara, a district of ancient Memphis, which includes the Giza Plateau. We're tying this into the Giza Plateau. So here we have a bull cult, and it's going to be bearing its bulls, and all this stuff is right within 10 miles of the Great Pyramids of Giza. So associated with Osiris after death. So now we have this connection with this entity PTAH, whose name means the opener. He's also the craftsman, being tied in with Osiris. Now both these gentlemen are often shown as green. Both of them have fake beards. Both of them, as we'll see, are associated with death, as we're starting to see right here with death. And another tie into that, PTAH was linked to Tenen, meaning the risen land, or Tenen, submerged land, which was an earth god connected with the primeval mound from which creation sprang. Another way to look at the PTAH, the Kaphtor, the Ka-PTAH, is if he's related to this primeval mound, one thing that would represent that primeval mound would be the island of Crete. And so if he went and started a god cult there, he could surely call Crete to his people and those who didn't know as the place where the world started, which is very interesting. So, and in this form, he was sometimes associated with Memphis. Those letters tie into the brother of Kaphtor, and then there's 3 sons of Mr. Memphis, Mr. Mizraim himself. 3 sons of his have the PTAH in their name. So it's really tying me into believing and thinking that Mizraim might be PTAH. But we'll get to that, and we'll see if we can tie that in concretely later. Importantly, to tie in our next piece here, next awesome article, he merged with Seqqara, a god of the necropolis, as PTAH Seqqara, the personification of the sun during the night. Both of them were associated with Osiris, and they got linked up as PTAH Seqqara Osiris. So Seqqara, interestingly enough, is a god that we're talking about, but it also became Seqqara, which is where I'm going to take you right now to show you that it's right next to Giza, Egypt. All this stuff is pointing to these gods, as we should have guessed, if the Bible's true, them coming and originating Egypt. One of the only questions I have left is if whether that pyramid was there from before the flood, if it was sitting there, they would come, of course, and that would be the spot to choose because of the massive buildings, and mainly also because of the great positioning of it. It is what leads you into basically Upper Egypt, which or South Egypt, right? So that would be the separation. So that's the main spot you want to be. But if the pyramid wasn't there, what we're going to do is look at this chart, and we'll come back to it, that shows that in that time period, how long does the Bible say they were living? 400 years. When you look at the line of Shem, 600 years, his son. And let's look down at the level of, if we look at the level of our people here, Mizraim. If Mizraim was PTAH, there is 3 more generations below him, or 2, that live up to 400 years. Can you imagine what those generations could get done? If Mizraim had 10 kids, and they had 10, in a crazy world, right? That means he could have up to 100 descendants who were living 400 years. Can you imagine the things that they'd be able to accomplish in that amount of time? It would be crazy. And so now we move on to the Serapeum of Seqqara. This Seqqara that you see here is Seqqara, one of the other names of the god we just showed, PTAH. Seqqara, so it's named after the god PTAH in his more his necropolis form, his god of the dead form, his underworld form. Okay, and it's known as the Serapeum of Seqqara. Serapis is the mixing of Osiris and Ptah, I believe, in the Apis Bull. And that's where we're at right now. So crazily enough, this is extremely close to the Giza Plateau. The Giza Plateau is going to be right there next to it. So it's right on it. And the Serapeum of Seqqara was the ancient Egyptian burial place for sacred bulls of the Apis cult at Memphis. It was believed that the bulls were incarnations of the god Ptah, which would become immortal after death as Osiris Apis. And hopefully with more study I'll be able to pop out a video on that, because his tie-in to Osiris and Seqqara seems to really tie him into this spot. But looking at our part, which is more lining up with the bull cult and such, that we see gigantic. When we look at it, I'll scroll down, we see that they'll use, as we see right here, 40 tons for the late period sarcophagus. So those are the small ones. Those are the little guys. When we scroll down to the real ones, what's that say right there? But they were built from hard stone, weighing as much as 62 tons, including the lid. And I've read other reports that they're weighing up to 100 tons. So here we see here, and then in these pictures, we see gigantic, well-cut tombs for the bull of Ptah, the Apis bull. No one even knows how these tombs were placed here. Some of them weigh up to 100 tons of hard rock and beautifully chiseled. Look at it, they look like they're shined. I mean, they look perfect. The weight is one factor, but they say the halls are either too small or barely just right to be able to move them through. It's a mystery for sure. But back to our point, Apis was considered to be a manifestation of the creation god Ptah. It was the soul, the Ba of Ptah, and it was the herald of Ptah. It was him. It portrayed him. They went and got prophecies from a bull, just like we see in India, and just like we see with Moloch. I've written down here, the bull was therefore a kind of servant who was himself divine. And we have the etymology that ties us in, Ptah and Kaphtor. We have the bull cult that ties us into Crete and Kaphtor. We have it all being in the beginning of the Egyptian civilization, just like the Bible said. He should come out of Mizraim and goes to Crete and then becomes the Philistines. And that's just the beginning. I have a lot more evidence to show you. So let's check it out. And that evidence takes us to a place as beautiful as this, the Giza Plateau, which is part of ancient Memphis, which we see all these things coming to tie in, showing us that this is where the biblical namesake of Ham, Mizraim, and Kaphtor came to and through. Now, whether this is from before the flood or not, I don't know yet, but I know this is exciting information nonetheless. And so because it's such a good article and leads us to such, I'm going to read it, and then we'll pull up some pretty cool pictures. So Memphis is located in the center of the floodplain of the western side of the Nile. Its fame comes from being the first capital of ancient Egypt. The unrivaled geographic location of Memphis, both commanding the entrance to the delta while being at the confluence of important trade routes, means that there was no possible alternative capital for any ruler with serious ambition to govern both Upper and Lower Egypt. Traditionally believed to have been founded in 3000 BC as the capital of politically unified Egypt, Memphis served as the effective administrative capital of the country during the Old Kingdom. Then during at least part of the Middle and New Kingdoms, the late period, and again in the Ptolemaic period. So this just shows that the city that we're talking about that was founded by Mizraim, which I'm going to show you right here. This city was founded by Mizraim, our Bible, the son of Ham. Whether or not these giant pyramids are made by him makes little difference to the fact that we're proving the Bible is true, which is the most exciting part to me. Okay, so I got a couple little notes here. Here comes some more names. The site contains many archaeological remains reflecting what life was like in ancient Egyptian city of Memphis, which include temples, of which the most important is the Temple of Ptah in Mitrahina. Does that name sound familiar to you? Mitrahina? Ptah was the local god of Memphis. That's Memphis, the city. That's Mizraim. Mizraim, the little Bible spelling is a Mitrahim. Here we are, Mitrahin, Mitrahina. This is pointing at this is Memphis right here. And Ptah was the local god of Memphis, the god of creation and the god of craftsmanship. So now we have the city Memphis. We have Ptah, and his temple is basically called Kaphtor, who's the local god of course he would be a god within there. Either Ptah is Memphis, and his son is Kaphtor, Kapata. And then here, the other tie-in, the god of craftsmanship, that's going to tie us into our next section, which is in the Kothar Wahasis, who is the god who's serving Baal and El and Ashtaroth, all those gods that we see in the Bible. This entity, KTR, Kothar, is going back and forth between Krete and Memphis. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that up, and I'm going to show you that section there, and we're going to do a read-through of that a little later on in another episode. So let's talk more about Memphis and why it's so great and what's involved in it, now that we know it's Mizraim, and now that we know that Kaphtor is probably coming from it. So other major religious buildings included the Sun Temples in Abu Ghraib and Abu Sir, the Temple of the god Apis in Memphis. So there's our building of the bull, right? And then opposite of that was the Temple of Ptah, all of which have been completely and utterly, unfortunately, destroyed, as you see in these pictures. And because of that, it's hard to show you exactly what happened, except for these pictures of the ruins. But we know that they were there, and that the Ptah and the Apis were across from each other, that they were combined with each other, and that is the entity of what went on in Crete. If he's calling the bull part of him, the bull is his Baal, right? What difference is that from the Minotaur who was over in Crete? And I would like to argue that there isn't much of a difference. We're putting down mountains of evidence that'd be hard to get out of, and I think that's because God has pointed out the truth, right? And continuing from the Apis in Memphis, the Serapeum in Seqqara, which is right next door, Hebsed Temple in Seqqara. Speaking of, there's Seqqara, and being the seat of royal power for over 8 dynasties. That's a lot. The city also contained palaces and ruins that survive of the palace of Apis. Okay? And so it's Memphis, but it's also called Mitrahim. That's where we want to focus, Mitzrahim. Okay? And then also know that this is 12 miles south of Cairo, which is also the capital nowadays. And Mitrahim is the foundation for all the dynasties of Egypt. It's the center of the bull cult like Crete. Ptah the craftsman like Crete. The bull man worshipped as God like Crete. An impossibly complex Apis bull burial ground, those pictures we saw, that points to people who could build and move heavy, who could build beautifully. The architecture was fantastic. And I'd just like to point out, look at the amazingness that the Bible is pointing us towards, that this was trying to get buried by the gods of Egypt, right? Because the God of the Bible is more powerful. And speaking of how powerful it is, this Mitrahim, more than 38 pyramids, which include the 3 pyramids of Giza, of which the Great Pyramid of Khufu is the only surviving wonder of the ancient world, and one of the most important monuments in the history of humankind. And we know that's true. The pyramids of Abu Sir, Seqqara, Dashur, and the Great Sphinx. There's the Bent Pyramid that's in there. There are more than 9,000 rock-cut tombs from different from the 1st to the 30th dynasty, extending to the Greco-Roman period. But around the 12th or 13th dynasty, as we'll see, it started moving on to Karnak, Luxor, Thebes, right? Back to Memphis. And Memphis, our Mitzrayim. In Memphis was founded one of the most important monuments of the world, and the only surviving wonder of the ancient world, namely the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its architectural design remains unparalleled, and scientists continue to conduct research on how it was constructed. The pyramid complex of Seqqara is also a great masterpiece of architectural design, for it contains the first monumental stone building ever constructed and the first pyramid ever built. There it is, the Pyramid of Djoser, or the Step Pyramid. It's at Seqqara. Seqqara being one of the names for Ptah. They're all tied in together. And then we have the great statue of Ramses, too, at Metrahina, and the pyramids of Dashur, also outstanding structures. So now I'm going to point to, I want to show you a couple pictures, and we'll do comparisons of Mr. Ramses. And we'll just take a quick look here. But I want you to look at the straight beard. Both of their beards are straight. Right? Think of the fact that Ramses II is known for going all throughout Egypt and erasing other people's names and putting his name onto things. He was known for doing that. We know that there was only a certain period where they were able to build these giant colossal statues. So my argument here would be kind of pushing towards the fact that Ptah and this Ramses II character might have been the same, because we have these colossal statues here. This statue here is found at the at Mitrahin. It's in an open. It's in a museum there, and there's also an open air museum there. But in the inside, you see this gigantic statue of Ramses that looks just like Ptah. And where was he found? According to this, right here, statue of Ramses. They say is 3,200 years old. Figure of Ramses II, depicting him standing. It was discovered in 1820 at the Great Temple of Ptah near Memphis, Egypt. So we have that being found there, and we also have this here Sphinx of Memphis. Sphinx of Memphis, and if we look at what they're putting the name as, the Mitrahim. If the Sphinx of Mitrahim, the Sphinx of Mizraim, is this the Sphinx of one of the sons of Ham? That's a possibility, right? Look at him just chilling there. It is not known which pharaoh is being honored, and there are no inscriptions to supply this information. So I'm surprised it's not Mr. Ramses here. I'm surprised he didn't put his name on that himself. The interesting thing, when you look at the date, 3,200 years, so minus 2,000 years to Christ leaves us 1,200 left over. So that would be after the Exodus. We don't have any, where's the details of them creating these massive statues sometime after the Exodus, when there's a lot more records in Egypt. Especially there would be, because after the Exodus, they'd be coming out of losing all their firstborn sons, losing their massive army and their pharaoh, God King. And so when and where do they have the power to start popping these things up? It's a good question to ask. I think they're hiding something. I think it might be Ptah, right? So let's jump ahead and do what I love to do and tie this study back to the Bible. And here I saved one of the coolest things for last, because the most exciting thing is proving the Bible true. Not figuring out who built the pyramids, that'd be second best. Proving the Bible true to the world is first best. So when we pop in here, when we ask Google who or what is Memphis in the Bible, is there such a thing? And it comes back with nope. And the etymology is going to pop up really important soon. We'll get to that. But we see here the Hebrew word nope, or mope, appears in the Hebrew Bible several times and refers to the ancient Egyptian city of Memphis. Memphis was the capital of Lower Egypt and was located on the Nile River near Cairo. As we've already gone over, it gives us a few verses. Let's start off with Isaiah 19, which is a prophecy against Egypt. And let's see where we can find what they're talking about Memphis in here. Verse 13, the princes of Zoan are become fools. The princes of Noph, or Memphis, are deceived. They have also seduced Egypt, even they that are the stay the strength of the tribes thereof. The Lord hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst, and they have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggers in his vomit. I apologize for that. It never happens to me. Neither shall there be any work for Egypt, which the head, the tail, the branch, or the rush may do. Because it's going to bring total and utter destruction against it. So this is showing about this time. If the Bible says that Egypt's going to be smashed, it means there must have been a decent amount of stuff there still. So when we go to that, I already knew, but let's go over it. Egypt was beaten by Assyria, and Assyria did that before and coming up to the point of them defeating Israel and taking the 10 northern tribes, where we lost the 10 tribes, mingled into history. Okay, so Assyria did attack Egypt before they attacked Israel, and so the Assyrians, in their defeat of Egypt, as it didn't just take 1 year, it took a while. Here we go. 734 BC, Assyrians conquered Tyre and Gaza, creating a cordon of vassals like a blockage that blocked the land route into Egypt and Arabia. Judah was one of these vassals, but it's unclear if King Ahaz allied with the Syrians in response to Gaza's capture or before. So we see them encroaching in. The Neo-Assyrian Emperor Sennacherib defeated the Egyptians and drove them from the region, conquering Ashkelon, Sidon, Ekron. It's a really cool battle. A lot of good history on that. He then marched towards Jerusalem, destroying 46 towns and villages along the way, including the city of Lachish. And we'll definitely see that part in the Bible because they're praying for his army, the army of Sennacherib, to be stopped. You remember, I think that has something to do with the 185,000 who disappeared in one night from the angel of the Lord. Sennacherib's successor, Esarhaddon, temporarily integrated Egypt into Assyrian's empire. So he started to make it a one-world empire, which the beast is always going to do, always going to be trying to form that one-world empire. And I want to say, give me a time period. So which pharaoh was it that went down here and defeated Assyria? Okay, so we scroll down. In 671, King Esarhaddon's army invaded Egypt and defeated Pharaoh Taharka of the 25th dynasty, but he was able to repel him. Here's what I'm looking for. In 669, Esarhaddon's heir Ashurbanipal invaded Egypt again and defeated Taharka at Thebes. Thebes was way past Memphis, so this means that Memphis had already went down as far as in importance. But Thebes is way deeper into Egypt. That's all the way down the river, almost getting in towards Ethiopia. Way far down from where he was. And back to our verse here, so we can identify Noph and do a little more study into it, so you don't think I'm lying to you. Alright, the princes of Noph have been deluded, talking about the destruction that's coming, and we can see that destruction today pop up in the Hebrew, a city in Egypt, over and over and over again, defined as Memphis. The interesting thing, and that's tying it to our study today, is it's NP. I'll just show you, this is NP in the Hebrew, and Noph, NP. Okay? You're like, Zach, what are you talking about? Well, it's a brother, this gentleman, the NPT, the Na-Patah, all right, is a brother to Ka-Patah, right, Kaphtor, Na-Patah, all right, who's also brothers with Patah here. So we have three sons of Mizraim, very, very interestingly, all having Patah in their name. Here he is right here. And so the spelling is N-P, second one's P, T, H, and Im, the plural. All right, so that's Na-Petahoim, how, you know, they don't have the vowels there. But we know that that's NP. And we get a little help by looking at our McClintock and Strong Biblical Cyclopedia. where we figure out that gentlemen of old have been identifying this tribe with the original Memphites. So this gentleman, the Naphtuim here, that you see right there, okay, it's saying that they're identifying these people with the original Memphites, whose capital, the dwelling of Ptah. So they're saying Ptah is contracted in Hebrew into Noph, or Noph, the city of Memphis. And if that's the case, if Ptah can be Noph, then why can't Ptah be Kaphtor? Okay? And so that's the important part, because then we're going to take that and delve further. So I wanted you to give you more pieces of this puzzle here to show that etymologically, by story, through the myths, and every way we look at it, it starts to tie into that we finally found the origins of Egypt is specifically found within our biblical characters. And I'd like to say thank you, God, for that, and I'm appreciative to God for that. I couldn't thank Him enough. And I would say that this is probably a good point to end our episode here. We've been surrounded and brought into the beauty and the mystery that is ancient Egypt, ancient Memphis, the foundation of our biblical characters from Ham. It's being unfolded here awesomely before our eyes. And in the next episode, I'll dive more into the location of Memphis and the other things that are around it. I want to soon tie into the legend of Kothar Wahasis, because he ties in the Baal and the El and the Ashtoreth characters that are straight out of the Bible. Well, he pops into the story here really soon. He comes, he's the carrier, he's the god that comes in between Memphis and Crete, and we're going to read that probably to start off our next episode. And then it's in the Ugaritic Baal cycle. Sorry, I almost forgot that. If you want to look that up, the Ugaritic Baal cycle, if you want to get a head start on that, because if you heard all those biblical basically names, the El is in the story, Dagon is in the story, Ashtaroth is in the story, Baal and Yam. So if you want a head start on that, it's a very good read, and we'll knock that out. And that's what's going to be the thing that starts to tie us into Crete more concretely. And if you're watching this series, I thank you. I ask you please like, share, and subscribe. Especially if you think it's awesome, please share it to other people. I've never seen this on video, and I've spent like 8 years getting to this information. So if you could share it, that'd be awesome. Please subscribe, and I'm going to keep developing into this series because as you're learning, I'm also learning to bring a lot of this to you. I mean, a lot of this information is God guiding me through it as I took the commitment to do these Bible studies and bring this information. He's just unloaded knowledge on me. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited to bring the next one to you. And until that time, God bless you. Be safe. And I'll see you next time. Peace.